for joining today. Real quick, we want to review today. We're just going to go over, ask some questions of both Greg and sounds like Tammy was just able to join us. Get some of their perspectives of what a retailer or wholesaler is looking for in your meetings coming up here at the GMDC conference. So, Tammy Marlowe with Associated Food Stores. She's the director of GM and HBW. She's on the call today to walk through those questions. Greg Douglas, director of drugstore and beauty care categories for HEB. And then on the supplier side, Nilda Oyola, vice president of sales from Majestic Drugs, going to kind of walk through some of her best practices and things that have worked well for her and her attendance at conference over a number of years. All three of those are board members with GMDC. And then also on the call today is Patrick Spears, our president and CEO. He's going to kind of do a quick introduction for us as we kick this off. Patrick?
Thank you, Jason, and good morning, everybody. I am joining you via my iPad right now due to some internet connectivity issues, and I'm also using a headset because of the nature of the air conditioning system in our building here, so I apologize for having to use the headset. But Jason, thank you for putting together this call, and it's great to speak with all of you this morning. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Orlando in the next few weeks. And as we prepare for the meeting, and as you prepare for the meeting, we thought it'd be helpful to articulate expectations and what, as you prepare for the many meetings you're going to have in Orlando, that you understand and I think calibrate how best to prepare, what to expect, and how to navigate what will essentially be a track meet, a couple of very hectic days. So when Jason asked me to participate in the call, I was happy to do so because I'm obviously passionate about connectivity. It's one of the things we say we do, and you'll see on the screen behind me, there's 4 words: connect, collaborate, create, and commerce. If I move, you can see them. Those are the things that we take pride in doing every day. I am about 1.5 years into my tenure at GMDC, and I came from the supplier side of the table. I spent a number of years in the CPG industry, actually close to 30, with companies like BIC and Rubbermaid, Mapa Spontex, which is now part of Jarden, which is now part of Newell Brands. And I attended many GM conferences over the years, and I was also on the GM advisory board and the GMDC board of directors for a number of years before I joined the association itself. So as such, I've got a keen familiarity with the conferences and really how to best navigate them. And I wanted to share some of that with you today. The first thing I want to suggest to all of you is use the resources we make available to our members, specifically on our website. I know Jason has talked to all of you, as has our member services team, about how best to prepare. Can't overemphasize the importance of using our website and using the resources that we make available to our members and our first-time attendees. Look at your schedule. Understand who you're meeting with. Do the work and the homework on understanding your customer or your potential customers' objectives. How many stores do they have? What banners do they trade in under? If they're a wholesaler, who are they supporting at retail? What categories are they supporting retailers with? Understand all of that going in. Make your notes, familiarize yourself with who you're meeting with. Because the worst thing you can do is sit down at a table in a limited, time-compressed environment and say, hey, my name is Patrick. Tell me about your business. No, wrong answer. It's a waste of time, and it will telegraph a very clear message to your retailer or wholesaler potential trading partner that you didn't do the homework, that you didn't take enough time to understand what their needs were. So again, really think about the work you put in, understand who you're meeting with, and what your objectives are for that meeting. I would also tell you that when you're sitting down at a table for an 8-minute meeting or a 10-minute meeting or perhaps a 20-minute meeting, that you understand what your company's objectives are for that meeting. And I would tell you that the thing you have to elaborate and put forth to potential trading partners boils down to 3 words. Those 3 words are, what's your story? Okay? If you're going to sit with a retailer or wholesaler and you say, hey, my name is Patrick, and I've got this really cool gizmo. I call it an iPhone. And I'd like to show you why you should be carrying this in your stores, in your system. Well, talk about the differentiators for your product. Talk about what makes your company unique. And ideally, it should be something other than price, because price is easily copied. And so think about your differentiators. And if I had to give each of you a challenge, I would put it this way. There's a concept known as onlyness. And it's the ability to say that your product is the only product that can do something. So, and we challenge ourselves at GMBC to think this way as well. How do you answer the challenge? Our blank is the only blank that blanks. And how do you fill in those blanks? And in the context of an 8 or 10 or a 20-minute meeting, if you focus on those differentiators, if you focus on the onlyness of your product, that's what you want to leave your merchants, that's what you want to leave your category managers with, about what makes you unique. Back to those 3 words, what's your story? Okay? I can assure you of one thing. Very few exceptions. You're not going to write a PO at the table. It's not going to happen. It's not what the meetings are for. Meetings are to inspire. Meetings are to articulate and to clarify with your potential trading partners, hey, this is who we are. This is why it matters. We make this really cool product. This is how we stand out in the marketplace. This is what makes us unique and different. And if you do business with us, we can help you grow your sales. We can help you expand your assortment. We can help differentiate you in the marketplace. If you do those things, if you make that connection in the context of your meetings, you will succeed. Put that focus on what makes you unique. Back to those 3 words. What's your story? So if I had to summarize it, prepare, do your homework, understand who you're sitting with, understand how many stores they have, understand the banners they trade under. If it's a wholesaler, understand who they support and what markets. Do your homework. Okay? You're not going to have time to say, hey, how about those Cubs? Or, boy, the weather's beautiful today. Or, tell me how many stores you have. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time. Make the most of that session. Focus on what makes you unique. Focus on how you differentiate. Focus on what's your story. Do those things and you will win.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. So kind of going from that overall objective of what we're doing when we sit down for these meetings, we're going to ask Greg and Tammy kind of some of the logistical ways of approaching those things that Patrick spoke about. So Greg and Tammy, feel free to chime in here, but when you're getting ready to sit down for your meetings, and to reiterate what Patrick said, you're looking for your suppliers to sit down and just get right to business. Is that correct, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, typically you have a very short amount of time at these initial meeting conferences that Patrick hit it right on the head. You don't want to waste time asking about like what markets I'm in or my store formats. We appreciate it if you get right at the business. And the saying we use is, a lot of times you're looking for first, best, or only. So are you the first company that has this, or are you the best one? You make the best whatever that is, or are you the only one that makes it? And so that always gets the buyer's interest piqued. And then I want to know, like, what's your distinctive competence? What is it that your company or your product does better than anybody else? And it might be not just the product attributes itself, but how you bring it to market, how you advertise it or relate to the customers, or how you flow it through the supply chain could be another way that you have a distinctive competence. I'm always interested who else carries it, and then you should be prepared to talk about if anybody else is carrying it, what kind of retails they have on it, because that's always going, right up top of the buyer's mind. But yeah, in these short time frame meetings, I mean, I really like to get right into the meat of it and save the niceties for the cocktail party afterwards.
Okay, great. Anything you'd like to add to that, Tammy? Okay. Greg, and so with our format being what it is, that you, the retailer, set stationary, and then our suppliers are going from table to table. Kind of help our the folks on the call today understand, for you, what are some of the best ways that they can present all the information you just talked about through sell sheets, through samples? What are you kind of looking for in that regards?
Yeah, that's that format presents some challenges, but I don't think they're insurmountable. I think what you want to do is avoid the temptation to try and show every item in the line. Again, you have a short time frame. What you want to do is make a big impression. So most lines have what you call a hero item. What is that one or two items that really people are they come to know that brand for, because that's their favorite item within the brand, and many items have the hero. I would spend the time on the hero item, and then you can hand out a brochure or a jump drive that has the link to your URL, and then it has the entire product catalog on it. But I'd spend the time on the hero item and then hand either a brochure or a jump drive or something to let the buyer, if you've hooked them right on those big items, then they can spend the time later to go peruse the rest of it.
So kind of building on that, as far as that leave behind goes, are you looking for something pretty simple? If that jump drive just has one or two sell sheets, or are you looking for a full catalog, or how expansive of a leave behind are you looking for?
Well, if it were up to me, if I was in their shoes, I would put the entire product catalog on there so the buyer can see how complete your assortment is, and then they can choose what items that they want to put in. And one thing to remember, when you're going in front of that buyer, you're asking to displace a known entity, right? They already have the store. They're not going to expand the store because your item came along and go back and add a shelf to every one of their stores. Something's got to go out for you to come in. So that's where we get at the distinctive competence, or what do you do better? And then you're a bit of a risk, so we don't know how yours can perform. But if you can share with us how yours is special, and then see all what you have in the assortment. Sometimes, if they don't know the full assortment, they might look at you only for a couple of items. But if they see a catalog where you've got a pretty extensive line and you can cover a segment, you might displace a whole brand because what you're offering resonates so well with their customer, and they have another brand that's sold between companies, or it's just not performing anymore. It's getting long in the tooth. You might luck out and say, look, I'm taking out this brand that has 17 SKUs in it. I've got that much space on the shelf. Because I got to see your whole catalog, now I see, wow, you make that much, assortment of product, you could displace the whole thing. So for me, I would let them see all of it, just make it easy for them to kind of sift and sort through.
That's great, Greg. And kind of like you're saying, it's not insurmountable, but lead with the heroes and then kind of end or leave behind that expands your breadth and areas in which you can help the retailer grow. So kind of also touching on that in that presentation, how much are you looking for regarding price or cost or anything around that portion of the presentation?
Any buyer that doesn't ask for that right up front is like either not paying attention. I mean, that's one of the first things you want to know, because you have to, your interest is metered largely by how it fits in what you're trying to accomplish, right? So if you've got opening price point, middle price, and then high price items, and you look at that product, you don't even know whether or not you're excited about it until you hear the cost and what the retail, is either recommended or it is out in the marketplace. So I think the supplier needs to be able to discuss, they don't have to lead with it, but they need to be able to have a frank conversation about it, and should know, hey, if I'm selling to these 5 retailers, here's what they're selling it for.
So we've kind of talked about oneness and raising the interest of the retailer. We've talked a little bit about pricing. As far as sales support, any discussions about brokerage or brokers or anything along that needs to be discussed in your meetings?
And this one I think it's not the same for necessarily every retailer, and honestly, it's not even the same within a retailer for all the suppliers. So there's companies that you go direct with because you have a very large portfolio of product with them, and so it makes sense for them to have local representation. And so typically, you'll have some direct representation, and then commonly you'll have smaller suppliers that don't offer that many items, or you haven't put that many items in your assortment. And then that's where representation like a broker can really add value. And the value that the broker typically adds is if they're local, they know our paperwork, they know our deadlines, they know when we reset our planograms, they know our culture, and so what kinds of things you should emphasize when you make a sales call. So there are times when those brokers and reps add a lot of value. And so, my only guideline, we go direct and we go with brokers, is I just want them to add value, right, to work for it and to make the relationship better by them being in the middle.
Okay. So once these high points are discussed, and as the meeting starts coming to a close, over the sound system in that room, there'll be a 1-minute call, and that's when the meeting's about ready to wrap up, and everyone's getting ready to rotate to their next table for their new meeting. When they hear that 1-minute call, it's a time for them to gauge your interest and next steps. Can you kind of tell me what you're looking for at that point from the manufacturer?
Yeah, I want to hit on one thing that I realized I didn't cover before, but I think is really important for them to cover. Then I'll jump down to that one, like the close. And that is, how are you going to care and feed for the brand once I accept it? So it's one thing to get me excited, and I think it's a really neat whoopee, and I want to put it in my assortment. So what I think my cost and retail equation is going to be, what my margin rate is going to be, is certainly part of it. And then how are you going to support the brand ongoing? So do you have trade fuel? Is there national spending? What's your A&P budget if you're spending $30 million a year on A&P? Those kinds of things help kind of push me over the top, because if you're spending a lot to advertise it in my marketplace and I don't have it, then leaves me, outside the playground looking in. So make sure that you present not only the product, but how you're going to take care of it and care and feed for that product on an ongoing basis. So in terms of the close, yeah, if you have 1 minute left, I think it's absolutely recommended that you at least ask for interest level, whether it's red, yellow, green light, or there's two things I would ask is, what's your overall interest level? Like, what's missing? Is there anything I can do that, help you with your decision? And then how may I follow up with you? Because a lot of times they're not going to decide, if they're seeing 63 people today, they're not going to decide just because you're done. They've got other people they've got to see. So, but I think you can absolutely and should ask for initial interest level. Hey, that does fit with me and my customers and how I go to market, or that's just not a good fit for us. And then the second one is, how long should I wait to get back with you? Because, you don't want to jump on them the first day they get back in the office, because again, they saw a lot of people. So, should I wait a week? But then I would definitely follow back up with them, because when we see people at the show and then they never follow back up with us, we kind of figure maybe they just weren't that serious about it.
And so, great points, Greg, and thanks for touching on the promotional and how to support the product. In addition to that time frame on when to follow up, also who to follow up, and maybe even asking when their category review is or something along that lines.
Yes, and here's what can sometimes happen. Like, we won't send every buyer to every show. So many times a buyer will cover, say, 2 or 3 desks, theirs, and then one other or 2 other desks. So sometimes you may be in front of a buyer that works for that company, but I buy hair care and this is an oral care item, and so I'm not going to make the decision on whether or not that item goes in. So you need to give me something memorable, so like a squeezy toy or a jump drive or something to make me remember our conversation, that I can then take back, and when I get back to the office, that I need to trot down the hall and say, hey, I saw these folks at this show. They were very, very effective. Here's the jump drive with their URL on it, and they're definitely worth a listen to. So I would just realize that dynamic can go on, because you don't always necessarily see the exact buyer for the desk. So,
and I think that kind of brings us close to the end here as far as what you're looking for, the expectations. And I think Patrick touched on it at the beginning there, but you're not writing a PO at these meetings. Can you kind of explain what's a good expectation in coming out of these 8 to 10 minute meetings?
Yeah, I think a good expectation for the supplier is to get that initial feedback on what's missing or how well it fits. They may just flat out love it and say, I'm really interested in the item, or they may say, it's a little high priced, or it doesn't match with my customers. And you take that feedback, but you should expect good, honest feedback, and ask just a temperature check. How excited are you on a 1 to 10? And then I think you should ask, when can I get back to you to get your final answer or whatever. I would say, that those are at an absolute minimum. Occasionally, you're going to see somebody that just loves the product and is going to put it in because it's so special and different. But I wouldn't say that you need to expect that every time, because that doesn't happen very often. A lot of times, like when I did these as a buyer, I had 23 other people behind you. So even if I loved the item, I had to see the rest of the folks to see which, I might only have room for 5, right? So I've got to decide at the end of it which are the top 5. So it's not I'm being rude and trying to be evasive if I tell you whether or not I'm going to put it in. I just haven't seen it everybody yet.
Very good. So we've walked over a lot of things that you're looking for. Are there a handful that you don't want to see? Maybe some of the don'ts in the meetings.
I think mostly they were covered. To me, it's a huge turnoff when they don't know who we are as a company, because there's this magic thing called the internet. So if you're going to have an appointment with somebody who could theoretically buy millions of dollars worth of your product, you at least ought to understand what business they're in, how many stores they have, and do a little bit of homework, and that's all presented. So, and then not knowing like where it's carried and what the retails are, I would expect that you would know those things. People go back and forth about should you talk about your competition. I prefer that they just tell me why theirs is better rather than downgrading or bad-mouthing competition. Just, they have product, we have product. Let me tell you why mine's different and better, rather than saying theirs is evil and nasty and it will kill you. That's, nobody kind of respects that kind of conversation.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. So Greg's kind of given us an overview of what the retailer is looking for in our meetings coming up here in early June. Nilda, are you able to hear us and still on with us?
Oh, geez. Yes, I'm able. Can you guys hear me?
So real quick, reintroduction here. Nilda with Majestic Drug, a veteran of attending conferences, sits on the supplier side of the desk. So VP of Sales for Majestic. We're going to walk through a few pointers that she has and some of the things that she's learned after attending numerous GMDC events. So Nilda, if you could walk through, a lot of this is probably going to be similar to what Greg talked about, but maybe some 3 pointers, both good and bad, that's been successful for you in the conferences.
Well, the first thing is, Greg, thank you so much for giving us some more information. When we sit on the other side of the desk, there are things that us suppliers forget. And the first thing that I teach everyone is you must do your homework. We have 8 to 10 minutes to present. Do not walk in with a 60-page deck. There isn't time for that. And I mean, anybody comes into me with a 60-page deck, I'm already bored. That's just me. So as far as the do's, the 3 strong pointers, one is the first thing you should do is you give a quick history of your company and who you are. Second is you have to let them know that you're a real person. You're not just a robot that's going in there to start spitting out numbers and data and why your product is the best. You have to let them know that you're also a real person that's coming in there with the idea that the first thing you want to do is you want to connect, right, Patrick? Connect.
Exactly.
You eventually want to collaborate. Further down the line, you will create, with the ultimate being commerce. So as far as the strong points is understanding the customer you're going to be sitting in front of, understanding who they sell to, understanding their customer, understanding the price points. Don't go in with an item that you want to retail at $14.99 when their price point is a dollar store. And as far as what to avoid in these first 8 to 10 minutes, is there really is no time for small talk. You can do that later on. We have plenty of opportunities where we can all stand together and have a drink and get to know each other there. But you have 8 to 10 minutes to make a really good impression to this buyer that has already seen 60 other people. So sort of like what Greg said, what do you need to do to make sure that they remember you? Me personally, I like to tell a joke. It just depends on who the person is. It either goes well or it doesn't go well, but either way, you're going to remember me. It was either a good joke, a dirty joke, or a bad joke. So those are my 3 strong and my 3 to avoid. So I hope I answered your questions.
Oh, you did awesome, Nilda. And as much personality as you bring, it's great. So great pointers to take from that, everyone. So as far as your presentation, your leave behind, we heard Greg, looking for a possible full catalog or full review in their leave behind. What's some of the things that you like to leave behind or kind of make that meeting a little bit more memorable after the conference is over?
Well, for me personally, again, it's impression. It's letting them know that you're here to become a team player with them. You're not there to just sell them an item and walk away. Follow-up is very important. And again, keeping your word. We kind of like to call that share of heart. So we get to know who they are. They get to know who we are. And this way we know whether we can do business together. So as far as what I leave behind is an impression, a business card, and we do like to participate in the product box so that our samples are already in the buyer's hands before we even sit for meetings.
Great.
Jason, if I could just add one thing here, I would recommend that they make sure they use the networking events and the social time afterwards, because you're so time compressed at the desk. I mean, when you're sitting there at that table, you have 8 minutes to share your product and why it's special. But the buyers are there and they're away from home, and so they'll go to those events, and that's where they get to know you kind of personally. So I would say it's definitely the buyer goes to those events because they want to get to know you a little bit. It's okay to go up and share a beverage with them and get to know them a little bit. Now, you don't want to like stalk them and follow them around to their room or monopolize them all night. But to go introduce yourself and have a beverage and then tell them a little bit about you and your family, that's what those events are for. And I figure if I'm there and I'm away from my family and it's 2, 3, 4 days, I go to that event so that I can get to know people and know who they are as people and about their companies. To Nilda's point earlier, you're so time compacted at the table. When a buyer goes to that event, they're absolutely fine with chit-chatting with you.
Perfect, Greg. And that's kind of my follow-up and what I wanted to know from both of you. What are some of the other things that to get involved with or to glean from outside of the meetings? So thank you for that. Nilda, would you like to comment on time at the conference outside of the meetings?
Yes, do not stalk. That's the best advice. Do not stalk. You won't be perceived as someone that really has something in their best interest. You're there to meet a goal, you're there to make a number, and that's it. You're not connecting if you're stalking.
Gotcha. And like Greg mentioned, it's very approachable outside of that, though. Take advantage of all the meals and the networking events that are at the conference. I know we have a large group on. No, let me real quick. Anything else you want to add as far as your portion of the meetings and what your part as a supplier and sitting down with the buyers?
I think the only thing that I would just reiterate is just to make sure that you share your heart with them, that they know that you're there for the same reason they're there. And it's to create an item that is going to create excitement, to get on the shelf, to make a sale.
Fantastic. Well, I know we've got a large group on today, but I'd like to kind of open this up if anyone has any questions. So if there's anyone out there that has any questions, let's try this out real quickly. I know, once again, a lot of people on, so let's be patient. Any questions of Greg or Tammy on the retailer side?
Just as a technological note, real quick, folks, if you're muted or we've muted you, you can always unmute yourself just by going to the lower left corner of your screen. And there's a little icon that has a microphone. You can mute and unmute yourself. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself and then ask the question.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Carol.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yeah, great. So I'm looking at this. This is the first time that we've been to one of these meetings, and the first time that we're going to be working with this type of industry. But we've got a couple of products I believe that we would need to go through a broker because our product line that works for this industry is limited. So if we go through a broker, then what sort of costs does that normally entail? And what sort of margins does the broker expect to be able to successfully make a profit themselves and also be able to supply the retailer with an item that's going to give them profit and sell tremendously? Does anyone? Is there an average, or does it? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Thanks, Carol.
Can Nilda take a stab at that?
Nilda, did you catch that? The question?
I did. I'm having a little problem here trying to unmute my phone.
Gotcha.
Yes. Carol, yes?
Yes.
I think that's a great question, but unfortunately, it's a question that has to be addressed with every single sales broker that comes across. It all depends on the account. It depends on the pricing that you would be offering your account. If you're offering a dead net, you just have to look to see what you're paying for your product and what your margin is to keep your business going.
Right.
And then that's when you sit and you negotiate with your brokers. You have a broker that'll be happy with 2%. You'll have a broker that'll ask you for 10. It all depends on what it is that you're willing to spend. And
Okay.
there are many brokers out there, and you can have many conversations with them.
Okay, that sounds fair. So it's not, obviously, it's not absolutely necessary, although you have to have a pretty good idea as to what the costs are. Oh, sorry about that. Hang on. As to what the cost is going to be to the end consumer, but it's negotiable. You have a chance, I assume, to go back and work out some details and get back to them later. Is that
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
right? Thank you. I'll unmute myself now. Or I'll mute myself now, I mean.
Thanks, Carol.
Hi, this is Nikhil from Pisces. I have a question about the pricing, which Greg had mentioned that he expects the prices to be in part of the catalog presentation. Not knowing the volume, not knowing the seriousness from the buying side, are we expected to put in every SKUs, every item's pricing in the part of the catalog, which is basically given away at the meeting?
I would usually expect it to streamline the process. And if you didn't know the pricing, then that would be kind of a red flag for me. Now, you talked about kind of the velocity of the item. There's what they call bracket pricing, that if you buy, full truckload, it's this price, and if you buy a pallet at a time, it's this. So you can give kind of the bracketed pricing. But typically, yeah, that's one of the first hurdles as a buyer I would go through. It's one of my first gates. If I see this product and I think it's positioned here, kind of in the middle of my price points in my assortment, then in order for me to decide whether or not I'm excited about the item, then I have to get an idea of the cost. So typically that's in there. That's not probably a deal killer, but we generally expect it. Obviously, we could never set it up and put it in until it was finalized.
Do you negotiate prices during the meeting?
Typically in these short ones, you just kind of present to us your offering. Again, if there's a buyer that really loves the product and wants to move forward with it, if they can work and use that 10 minutes or whatever to try and get, but that's kind of a down in the weeds tactical thing that would be really difficult to do in this time frame. What I would usually do is, if I love that product, I would schedule a follow-up then, like when you call me back or email me back at the end, either have you come in or have a good substantive 30-minute phone call with you over the phone, where we can start talking about kind of volumes and what the cost would be, and then doing those negotiations. I would think that would normally be in a subsequent meeting. It would be pretty difficult to do. But I'm asking all kinds of questions in that 10 minutes of how much marketing you're doing, who else carries the item. That's pretty detailed to be in that short a time
Well,
frame.
and that's the reason I asked you the question. You had mentioned that sometimes there are advertising monies and all the other supports. and not knowing all those requirements, putting up a pricing in the catalog and later realizing it was not supposed to be for all the other loads which come with that. So do you think so it's advisable, or just not be at your best pricing when you introduce the item?
That's a tough call. We usually expect that you're pretty far along with your product and you've decided, what all of those components are before you come into the meeting. So we figure you already know, like, your bracket pricing and those kind. If your product is early enough in its development that all that's not decided, then I would be upfront with that in the meeting and say, look, this product is in development and we're just now, bringing it to market, and we've just finished off our factory negotiations, and so it's in the beginning, it's in the infancy of this product. So we've got some things to work out, but I'd be happy to sit with you and
Greg, you suddenly gone on mute.
Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, so what I would expect is that normally that the pricing is known going in when you come to the meeting. But if your product is young and it's in development and you're just getting a factory going and you're just starting up with the product and it's brand new, I would be upfront and say, look, we don't have everything finished off yet, from trade fuel to the bracket pricing, because we're just bringing this product to market and it's a very new product that's just launching. But I'd be happy to double back with you and if you want to get in on the ground floor of this, to negotiate all that with you and set it up, and to say you're going to do that at a later date, that would be fine. Normally on a mature item, when you walk in, we expect that you have all that stuff figured out. But if it's brand new and you're just bringing it to market, buyers love getting in on the ground floor of things. So, having the opportunity to help shape it.
Yeah, if I can, Greg, if I can just amplify real quick, I think, Nikhil, the way to think about it is, you're going to come into that meeting and you're going to try and focus on what makes your product or your products unique. And you're going to ideally come away with an opportunity to have a more substantive conversation after the conference, just to calibrate everybody's expectations. And I think Greg mentioned this as well. It's probably unique and somewhat rare to get down in the weeds on pricing in that 10-minute conversation, because really you're trying to lay the framework for a more robust conversation afterwards. You're trying to set the hook. If we think about we're fishing here, you're just trying to get that fish on the hook, and you're going to work over time then to bring that fish into the boat. And I think that's the case here, Nikhil. So I think if you directionally can talk about your pricing, but to Greg's point, you may not have it all baked yet, and that's okay. If there's genuine interest in the product or in the concept, you'll have an opportunity after the conference to more deeply engage with your trading partners.
Sure. Well, in our case, it was more of a question of how the deal is structured rather than the product itself being developed. But yes, we got the point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
questions?
Questions, guys? So I'll do a quick recap email of the call today, and then some additional resources, the ones that Patrick talked about on the front end of the call, where to go and do the research on the retailers. And then this will be recorded, like Ann mentioned, or is being recorded, so we can come back and reference this in the next week and a half here as we get prepared for the conference. Our staff here is going to be available through the rest of this week and first part of next week to answer any questions that you have logistically, and help you get prepared for a successful conference. So any other thing you'd like to add, Patrick?
No, I just would tell you that looking forward to seeing all of you in Orlando. And please don't hesitate to call on us, on anybody on the team, between now and when we convene for the conference. We are here to help you. And as a member-driven, member-owned organization, we are only as good as the value we create for our members, and that obviously includes everybody on this call. We want everybody to have an exciting, productive conference. We want to create connections that will enable business growth for everybody here. And that is our mission, to create opportunities for business growth. So please don't hesitate to let us know how we can assist. Please make sure you do your homework. Utilize the resources that are available on our website, and just know that we're here to help you between now and when we get together. So I appreciate everybody making the time today, and Jason, great work in facilitating the call.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you.
you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, everybody.